much for coming. Someone apparently requested that I speak about MS, and Nalini by Ashanti asked me if I could do the talk in Nalini's absence, which I accepted. And I came up with a topic, living with MS and adapting, accommodating and adjusting the relevant lifestyle changes, which I thought is pertinent nowadays, not just for MS, but for any disease or any situation in life, and it actually encompasses. Because if I start just talking about MS, it's not going to be a biology lesson. Okay, so I'll just talk a bit about MS, on what it actually is, and then I'll go into the tools, the yogic tools, which I have used and has helped me to actually overcome to a certain extent and live with it and live a normal life. So MS stands for multiple sclerosis, okay? And our body has a central nervous system which comprises the spinal cord, the brain and the optic nerves, okay? That's the central nervous system. So MS, multiple sclerosis, is when the body's immune system is directed against the central nervous system, okay? So you could have actually lesions in the brains or spinal cord or on the optic nerve. Sclerosis stands for, what was it? Oh yeah, scar tissue, okay? So basically, when you have a relapse or an attack, you have scar tissue, which interrupts the signals from the brain or from the spinal cord, and then it actually limits your movement or or progresses your disability. So obviously when the nerves are damaged, then there is obviously demyelination. Myelin, if you think about it like an antenna cable, okay, you have the protection and then you have the wire going into the TV. Now if you take off the antenna protection, the cable around it, so the white one, yeah, then what happens is you damage the signal coming through into the TV and you get a distorted image. So myelin is actually what protects, it's a fatty substance which protects the nerves, okay? And it actually insulates the nerves. So it helps signals from the brain or spinal cord respond and communicate with the bodily functions, okay? Now, what happens is when there's damage to the myelin, what happens is when you have a relapse or an attack, the body's immune system, like when you're seriously sick, it actually attacks you, it attacks the myelin instead of the alien coming into the body or the infection. So it actually eats at the myelin, and then what happens, the nerve is not protected anymore, and then you get nerve damage. Same like an antenna cable, you take off the protection, you damage the cable, and then the signal doesn't come as it should, because there's no insulation. Okay? So, obviously the nerve impulses traveling to and from the brain are interrupted or disrupted, and then once damage is actually caused, then there's no going back. And that's why it actually progresses. You get more and more damage, and then the disability increases. Okay? There's four stages of MS. You have the CIS, which is clinically isolated syndrome. That basically is you have sort of MS symptoms for 24 hours and then they disappear. Okay, it could be or could not be MS. It's just a one-off. Then you have RRMS, which is remitting and relapsing multiple sclerosis. You have primary progressive and secondary progressive. The stage that I am at is RRMS, remitting and relapsing MS, okay? So, I have, for example, lesions in my brain. Lesions are scar tissue, okay? And I was diagnosed because I had nerve damage in my eye. It's called optic neuritis. So, for example, with my left eye, I can't see very well. If I were to cover my eye, even with my lenses which I have on, I couldn't really read much. Okay, so the alphabet is quite difficult for me from a distance. So that damage, optic nerve damage, is done. So there's no going back. So what you can do with multiple sclerosis is sort of stabilize it so it doesn't progress any further. And there's certain tools which I'll go on to later. Any questions on that?
Interesting.
Alright, so multiple sclerosis, again, it's sort of known as an invisible disease because although the person may look fine on the outside, the symptoms that the person gets are invisible. Only the person who's going through it knows what's going on, and you learn to live with it, and you learn to accept the pain and just get on with life, okay? Now, it is a chronic illness. As I said, it's a critical illness and it's progressive. There's no cure and no one knows why people are diagnosed with MS or why this comes about. There's various theories. It's because of an illness, a virus. Is it because of an accident and you've had a neck trauma? And there's various theories, but nothing has been conclusive. So, on the remitting relapsing, basically what happens is the relapse is the orange, yeah? So you have a relapse and the disability on the left, and there's time on the x-axis, okay? So what happens? You have a relapse, you sort of have disability. In my case, I had vision problems for 6 months. So the optic nerve, what happened in my case, which is part of the central nervous system, it actually inflamed. So some people actually go completely blind, and then they start to regain the vision. I regained it obviously, but not full. Okay, so you have like orange, and then you can have full recovery, and then the blue is active without worsening, so you can go back to normal life. Then you can have another relapse, and it goes down, but you see the red one on the RMS, yeah? That's when worsening or incomplete recovery from a relapse. In my case, again, it's the vision. I recovered, but not full, so it's damaged. So you're up there, the disability sort of my eye is up there, yeah? Then you are stable, or you have another relapse, and then you have more disability. So as it goes, the damage, once it's done, there's no going back, and it goes up and up, and disability progresses. The second one, once you move on, hopefully you don't, is primary progressive MS. And basically it shows that the red is obviously active, there's a relapse or a new MRI activity, okay? And with progression. So it's actually progressing, and the red there's damage. Then you have sort of a period where it is not active and there's no progression. And then you have progression again, and then you have again a relapse, and there's not full recovery, so you go up again, and so on and so forth, okay? And then secondary progressive, as you can see, it goes up, and disability progresses. People can end up on a wheelchair as it progresses. The main thing is to try and avoid relapses, because with relapse it can be full or incomplete recovery. And then when the damage is done, it's done. And that is why it is very, very important to try and avoid any relapses. Okay?
Melvin, would you like the microphone?
As you wish.
I'm not sure.
Okay,
I'm okay, but just so for you not to strain your voice.
I'm okay, don't worry.
Fine.
I speak loud because I'm half deaf anyway.
Okay.
Okay. Where are we? Alright. Okay, symptoms. The most common symptoms are listed on the left, and the less common symptoms are on the right, which are more common obviously as the disease progresses. So, the general ones, for example, which I've experienced, are sometimes or very rarely fatigue at the beginning, walking difficulties. You start to walk and it looks like you've had a couple of beers. You start swaying left and right and it looks like you're actually drunk, funny enough. And people say, oh, Dad, you look like you're drunk. Sometimes, I mean, some time ago, before I had Ayurvedic treatment, they said that. I said, well, get used to it, but it's going to get worse. Numbness or tingling. I also had numbness and tingling in the past. Thank God for the past couple of years with Ayurvedic treatment, it all disappeared. Weakness. Yes, sometimes when I'm overexhausted or stressed, then I do start to get weakness and pain. Bladder problems. Touch wood. I haven't had those at the moment. Bowel problems. Emotional changes. Yes. Again, it depends, because if you're exhausted and you're tired, you get frustrated, you're stressed, and emotional changes. So, and with the disease, what happens, because it affects the nerves, I suppose that's why the saying exists, you're getting on my nerves, is when people lose it. I do feel sometimes I react to certain situations where maybe before I wouldn't have, or had more patience, and nowadays I'm less patient. And I do feel that emotional changes, it has an effect in this aspect. Depression, again, thank God, and thank, I must say, Gurudev and Ani for their teachings, is I haven't fallen into depression yet, and I hope I never will. Okay? So a lot of the symptoms I have had in the past, although most of them have disappeared. I won't go too much into less common systems. It can progress to speech problems, seizures, tremors, itching, headaches. Headaches I do get anyway because I've got 3 kids, so I think it's normal. Okay, so that's more or less it. Okay, just to give you a bit of history on what's happened to me in a couple of years, which were, I would say, traumatic to a certain extent. They were the years between 2011 and 2013, where I faced difficult situations. In June 2011, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. After a long illness, I remember I came back from France after doing an off-road training, and my mom told me he had been hospitalized because when he couldn't eat or drink anything because his esophagus had closed. So when he drank some water, it would be like a tap with a plug in. The water would just stay in his mouth. So after several months of going to Cadiz, being in the hospital, finally pushing the hospital, he was sent to the Zanet, and he was actually operated on his birthday, 25th of June, and they put a stent in. Now, when I went over, we all went over to see him, and it was great news, but unfortunately when we got there, my mom was crying, and we asked her, why are you crying? And they said, we've opened up his esophagus, he can start weaning again, but we found cancer, and it's terminal. So obviously, it was a shock. She sort of knew it because my mom was a night sister for 30 years, so she sort of suspected it. So all we could do is, because 3 of us are quite spiritually orientated, so we always think in the yogic philosophy sort of, and we've been brought up quite spiritually. So with that, we always knew there's a reason for everything, and everyone has their own cross to bear and karmic account. So that spiritual knowledge helped us a lot to accept. So next month, I had a holiday planned, and my mom said, look, just go for your holiday with your family. We were going to Benidorm. So we had booked with another couple. So we said, okay, we'll just go and try and get a break and change a bit of environment. So we went to Benidorm, and as luck has it, my son, which was then, he was then 8, he fell off a diving board, 2.5 meter diving board, onto the concrete. He fell, actually saw him fall, and he hit his skull on the head. So I ran to him, and it was very weird, the feeling, because although I was in shock, at the same time, I was calm. I don't know if it was like, again, Gurudev there or something, but he was moving a bit and talking and just blabbering, but then he went. And I didn't know, was he alive? Was he dead? Was he going to survive? Did he have brain damage? All thoughts run through my mind, but at the same time it was really weird, because I had this calmness in me. So the ambulance came, took him, and funny enough, a week before I had done my first aid course again, because every 3 years you need to actually revamp it and come up to date with the latest changes. And the ambulance came, and they were going to pick him up, and I said, what about the neck? He's fallen from 2.5 meters, you've got to suspect a spinal injury. Oh, so, and this thing just came out, so I had to tell the guy from the ambulance what he had to do. So he put the neck, and they put him to the ambulance, and they said, only one person can come. So his mother went with him, and with the other couple we went with, because we had my daughter Paris, who at that time must have been about 4, so she stayed with that couple, would just go. So I got my car, she went in the ambulance, and they sort of gave me an indication where the hospital was, in Benidorm itself. So the ambulance sped off with her, and I went with my car. Thank God I had the GPS, so I went down, and it was really weird because I came across a tanatorio, which is a mortuary. And I stopped there because I couldn't find the hospital, and I said, my God, after all this, you're going to take me to mortuary. So I went in and I said, look, I'm looking for this hospital. And they directed me, it's just around the corner. So I went to the hospital and I asked at the reception, look, has the ambulance come with my son? They said, no one's come here yet. So that was a bit jittery. And I was just saying my mantra all the time and just praying. That's all you could do in those circumstances, you know. You're just completely helpless. And then after some time, the ambulance arrived with my wife and my son. What happened was the ambulance had stopped at another hospital because he started to bleed through the nose, and then they had to get it checked out. But it was fine, so they put some cotton wool and then they carried on. So they got to the hospital, did a CT scan, just saying the mantras and praying, And then they said, look, he can't stay here. He has to go to Alicante, because that's where the neurosurgeons are, just in case they have to open him up. So what happened was, we had to wait. They did a CT scan, and they said, look, we don't see any brain damage, which was a great relief, but he's got a fractured orbital area and nose, so air bubbles have got into his brain. So we need to send him to Alicante. Now we have to wait for the second ambulance to come from Alicante to take him. So we waited, praying mantra all the time, and the ambulance came. So my wife was going to go into the ambulance with him, and they said, no, you can't come. We have the doctors here, 3 or 4, no one can come in the ambulance. So we're a bit shocked, saying, well, we don't know where the hospital is in Alicante. Again, GPS, thank God for technology. So he went in, and the ambulance left. And I've got my wife with me, let's get into the car, let's follow the ambulance. So we followed the ambulance until we reached the toll road, and it just whizzed us through, and we lost track of it. So my son's just he's unconscious with all these doctors, which he doesn't know, and me with my wife in the car, just with Gurudev's mantras in the audio playing in the background. And we got there, just got there. Don't ask me how. Again, he was guiding us all the time. My wife ran to the reception, and he was there. And we waited till 1 in the morning for them to give us a room. This accident happened at 4 in the afternoon on a Sunday. So 1 in the morning he was still unconscious, but we already had the CT scan, so we were a bit calmer. And then the next morning, thank God, he woke up at 9:30 in the morning, and the whole week we stayed with him in the hospital. And we left on the Friday, and we will come back on the Saturday. So the whole week we spent in the hospital.
Your holiday?
My holiday, the whole holiday. At least my daughter was with the other couple doing the things in the background, and I stayed with him in the hospital, while my wife also joined them. And they, on the Sunday itself, they were incredible. They did the CT scan in the first hospital. When we went to the second hospital, which where the neurosurgeons, when the neuro department was, they did ultrasound, they did MRI scans on the Sunday itself, and they said nothing else. And when we explained to them what had happened, they said, this is a miracle, he must have had the saints with him, putting his arm and cushioning his fall. When we came back to Gibraltar, we went to see Dr. Morizo, a specialist surgeon as well, to see his skull. And he said that he's been really lucky, because at that age your skull is not fully formed. So he was still soft to actually buffer the impact. Not only that way he hit himself here. If he had just turned a bit when he fell, he wouldn't have been here, because this part here is very soft. So look at everything. That second he would have just turned. So he just missed the soft part. The fall happened when just after 7 or 8 is when the skull starts to solidify. So it was still soft enough. So everything you could see was in place. No fracture. He fell on the side, so he had the orbital area and the nose, but nothing to his arm, his shoulder, his ribs, no internal, nothing. They said that he must have had an angel place the arms around him, and he just got the head fracture.
Amazing.
It was completely amazing. They couldn't actually believe it themselves. So yeah, he woke up. Obviously, he couldn't open his eye for a week. They tested his eyes before he left. Then little by little, with saline, the last about 5-6 days later, the day before we came back, then he opened his eye. It was obviously bloodshot, but we just thank God that he was alive and he was here. So very emotional experience. And yeah, he couldn't go to the beach for 1 or 2 months because of the fracture, and to go underwater because of the pressure. He had obviously a fracture, had to heal, and air bubbles in the brain. We didn't know until the penultimate day, because they had to do another CT scan, because in order to release him, they had to make sure that the air bubbles had pushed themselves out, which they had. So they were monitoring him all the time. So that was in July 2011. April 2012, I was involved in a car accident, injuring my shoulder. That was with my job. Person did a figure of 8, sort of without warning. I didn't have my seatbelt, in all fairness, but it was in a bonded area where you're allowed to only go about 20 kilometers an hour. It's inside the port. And normally they do that to show clients what the vehicle can do. It's an armored vehicle. So suddenly the car, just from doing nothing and just actually cruising, suddenly did a figure of 8, the car overturned, went on its side, and I hit my shoulder on the armrest at the top, which dislocated this part of the shoulder. And yeah, we couldn't open the rear of the door because it's so heavy, it's an armored vehicle.
Yeah.
So people from the outside came to open it. They had a forklift to try and put the vehicle upright, which was very difficult because it's very heavy. And yeah, it must have been a shock to the system. When I'm on my side, thank God it was armored glass, and I could see the road just cruising because it actually flipped 90 degrees and kept on going. And thank God also it didn't go towards the sea because it went opposite. Otherwise it would have actually fallen into the water and then we would have been a goner. Because with, I don't know how many kilos, 5,000-6,000 kilos, we would have just gone straight to the bottom. We wouldn't open the door. So that's another blessing. We went one direction, the figure of 8 and not towards the sea. June 2012, a year later, obviously my dad passed away. That was another blow. Although we expected it, it's still never ready. And in December 2012, I started getting the MS symptoms, which is what I previously mentioned. The tingling, bit of fatigue, optic neuritis in the left eye, which is obviously still there. And then constant headaches, numbness, loss of balance, you name it, yeah? My mum actually saw me in my house during Christmas when we had the family over. My knee was going and she said, you need to get it checked out. I said, Mum, don't worry, everything will be okay. So she insisted. We went to outpatients, I remember, and I said I had weakness in my arm. So they said, come back in January. So I went back in January and I went to the health center because I was getting headaches on my right side. And he sent me to the optical department in the hospital. And when Dr. Griffith saw me, he said, look, you have optic neuritis. And that's normally a symptom of MS. So we need to do an MRI scan. So I did an MRI scan in Algeciras and he said, look, you have lesions in the brain, which is scar tissue. Sclerosis stands for scarred tissue. So the only way to confirm MS is if you do a lumbar puncture. So they put the needle up the spine, took out the liquid, and then they actually clinically diagnosed it.
Because is it a gene then, or?
No one knows what it is. They don't say it's hereditary. They just don't know where it comes or why it actually suddenly appears. I read certain, I did a lot of research after that, and there's certain people say also when you have a neck injury or when you have traumatic experiences. I know someone who had or developed MS when they had a difficult pregnancy. So I personally feel inside, although maybe I had it but it was dormant, what maybe antagonized it and exasperated it maybe was, I think it could have been the accident, because 6 months later after the accident, which I had a neck injury and a shoulder injury, is linked, it actually symptoms started to manifest. There's also latest progression and research. People are talking about an atlas. And there's an atlas which is part of the neck or something treatment, which I have to look into, which they say that correcting that could actually reverse it. I haven't looked into that yet, but it's something I need to research still.
That they do in La Linea.
In La Linea,
No,
atlas
that's
correction.
my son had it done.
I've read it. I've got to carry on because I'm actually in an MS recovery group worldwide, and there were a lot of people share information. It's all positive stuff. So it's great because everyone shares their knowledge and their experiences, and people learn from each other. Because unfortunately, doctors, they go via the chemical route, contemporary medicine, and they try to give you whatever they know, whatever they've been educated in, and their protocol, which is the medicine books. Now, they gave me Avonex to inject once a week, which I did for 6 months, before going for Ayurveda, and I'll explain how I got there in a while. So, yogic tools used. How does all this integrate and fit in with yoga? Okay, these are yogic tools and principles which I applied, and basically they can be used with any ailment or situation in life. The first thing, okay, what is yoga? As we always know, as we all know, as Patanjali says, yoga chitti vritti nirodha. Restraint of the modifications of the mind stuff is yoga. So, the first thing, as Nalini always says, as well, is acceptance. Accept it, because if you fight something, what happens? You get more stressed. There's certain chemical imbalances which happen within you. So instead of making matters better, you make it worse. So the first thing I said, okay, acceptance. Once you accept something in life, 50% of the battle is won. So I was officially diagnosed in February 2013, 2 months after I started having the initial symptoms, which was over Christmas. Okay? So that's the first step I took. The second stuff, okay, solution focus. What are the solutions? But you can't go back. The past is the past. You can only go forward. What can I do? Okay, MS, multiple sclerosis. Link it into Patanjali. MS, I'll use it as mind stuff. Okay, mind stuff is a better abbreviation for me than multiple sclerosis. Alright, so, mind stuff. What can I do with my mind to try and help me overcome or deal with this, or any situation or ailment in life? There's people, yes, who unfortunately are diagnosed with cancer and other ailments and illnesses, which are unpredictable, and you never know what's going to hit you and when. So, these are the tools I used. Again, this, as far as I know, it's not life-threatening. Yes, some people have passed away with MS, but that's very rare, okay? So, diet. I started to research, and what I happened to come across was Dr. Swank. Dr. Swank was a neurologist about 60, 70 years ago who did a research with MS patients. And their personal stories, which people have actually, from being on a wheelchair, have actually started to walk and use bicycles and do exercises which they never dreamed of. So, what does the diet consist of? Basically, it consists of limiting saturated fat in your diet. Actually, this fits in, and with Jasmine's talk she gave some time ago, I don't know if you'll attend to that, but Jasmine gave a talk on, because she's a nutritionist, yeah, and she gave a talk on diet. And a lot of this actually made sense to me because it fits in with Dr. Swank's diet. Saturated fat is the bad fat, which is toxic for the body, and the idea behind this is to limit your saturated fat to 15 grams a day. And they noticed that with that, you can basically hold or not have any more relapses, okay? Or hold the progression. So that's what I started to do at the beginning. And again, the first year, no meat. Ring a bell? No meat. Funny enough. And then after, they can actually introduce it, but in limited amounts, because meat is full of saturated fat. So the idea, which I suppose the reason for not having any meat in the first year, is to accelerate the detoxification process of the body naturally, and people could actually or may actually feel the benefits maybe 1 or 2 years later, because the body takes time to purge out all the toxins. And obviously try and eat parts of the chicken or fish, whatever, which are low in saturated fat. Fish, for example, is good to avoid bluefish, which has a lot of mercury as well. So all this information, which I started to collate, sort of made sense because it actually fitted in with the yogic philosophy of being vegetarian, for example, and linking it to the health, how it affects the health. With me it was very funny because I left meat some time ago because I felt sorry for the lambs, so I started eating lamb, baby sheep, so I just felt sorry one day, I said I'm going to stop having lamb. Then I stopped red meat, and then I only ate chicken and fish. Now I went with my cousin and my auntie once to, what do you call this, Holiday Inn, or Holiday Palace? One of these all-inclusive restaurants in Spain. And the first day there, I ate a lot of chicken, which was great. I went to bed first night, we were there for 3 days, and I had a dream. And guess who appeared? Gurudev, Sri Swami Satchidananda. And he said, it's time now to give chicken. And I sort of talked to him in my dream and said, well, listen, I've come to an all-inclusive, and maybe it's the wrong time, maybe when I get back. And I said, no, it's time now. So I woke up the next morning, and I told my wife and my auntie, was there, I said, look, I'll be here 2 more days, but now I can't eat any more chicken because I had a dream last night, I have to leave the chicken. So I said, you know what it is there. But oh, well, I said, that's the decision I took. So I just ate the fish. And then I'll go into that later on with Ayurveda again. After Ayurveda, basically I came back and I just decided to leave fish. So basically, more or less vegan, because part of Dr. Swank's diet also, like Jasmine mentioned, that dairy products are not good for you. So I have to avoid dairy as well. No butter, no milk, and no cheese. So little by little, funny enough, life has been coming or directing me by itself. So I do admit that sometimes I do have cheese, very rarely, but when I go abroad or go on a business trip it's difficult. So I do have cheese on and off, very rarely. I don't have sort of pizzas or pizzas without maybe cheese, or lasagnas. I replace the cheese with breadcrumbs, and I try to stick to Dr. Swank's diet, which has been very effective. Apart from that, no alcohol in Dr. Swank's diet because it makes things worse. Wine is okay from time to time, but no beer and sort of fizzy alcohol or spirits, and no soft drinks, which are quite toxic as well. So there's a lot of lifestyle changes you have to do when you have this disease if you don't want to progress. So it's a free choice. I basically, when I changed to that diet, in 3 months I lost 10 kilos. So the body sort of purged out all the toxins from me. And then I went for Ayurvedic treatment, which I'll come into later, and then in total I lost 20 kilos. Naturally. Okay, next point after diet, PMA, positive mental attitude. Again, like yoga promotes or says, Praktipakshavavana, replacing negative thoughts with positive thoughts, okay? Why? Because there's a chemical reaction which does happen, and it has been proved when you think positive and when you think negative. You know, I always remember saying, I read somewhere, it says, worrying is like a rocking chair. It moves, but gets you nowhere. And you only lose energy and depletes your energy, okay? So I always try to think of that and say, again, all this is linked together, acceptance, social focus, PMA, they're all linked. So all these yogic principles I try to apply, and they all work hand in hand, one without the other, thus it's not as effective, okay? And I'll just show you a little video on neuroplasticity, which I came across recently, which shows you the benefits of positivity.
Hi, I'm Dr. Amit Agarwal, naturopathic doctor and psychotherapist. I want to share with you one of my favorite exercises from my new book. This exercise...
Sorry. Let me just try and get it to work. Sorry about that. Maybe I'm not meant to show it. Now, yes, I am meant to show it.
Hi, I'm Dr. Amit Agarwal, naturopathic doctor and psychotherapist. I want to share with you one of my favorite exercises from my new book. This exercise is called Noticing What Went Well, and it actually has the power to change your entire brain's chemistry. What I'd like you to do to start off with is every evening before you go to bed, I want you to spend 5 minutes thinking about all the little things that went well for you during that day. And the next morning, spend 5 minutes doing the same thing. It could be small things like a dog came in and licked your fingers, if you like dogs, or someone cooked a wonderful meal for you, or a beautiful person smiled at you. Whatever went well, commit yourself and fill in those 5 minutes with only positive experiences. Why this works better than just thinking about positive thoughts is that thinking about real life experiences has an emotional component to it. So your body believes it more and actually shifts your brain chemistry and the nerve connections in your brain using what we call neuroplasticity, so that your brain is actually more permanently wired to think of positive thoughts. If you do this for a week or even longer, you will begin to feel more positive every time you wake up, every time you go to bed. You will expect more positive thoughts, more positive feelings. So instead of reaching for that cup of coffee or that cigarette in the morning, have this glass of happiness and enjoy your life from now on. Thank you.
Okay, so basically what you do instead of just having positive thoughts, in order to have that emotional connection, you think of something which has gone well in the past 2 days, because then you will be emotionally connected and it has an effect on the nerves and on the emotions, on the mindset, and once it becomes a habit, then it just happens automatically. like Nalini mentions many times, when you do your mantra constantly or meditate for a long time, you just hear it in the background automatically. So this is sort of the same philosophy. Okay? Faith. And Nali keeps on going on and keeps on reiterating that, and Guru Dev always used to say, that trust in God and fear don't go together. Okay? So, faith is not about things turning out okay. It's about being okay no matter how things turn out. Okay? So living, again, like Guru Dev's book, The Golden Present, living today for today. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You might be run over by a bus. Who knows? So you live today for today, the golden present. Okay? Not expecting anything, because then you will be disappointed. So don't worry if things will be turning out okay or not. Just be okay no matter how things turn out. And that comes with faith. Reducing stress. Okay, this is something I came up with and just came up a couple of days ago. Stress, the abbreviation for me is stop, think, rest, evaluate what's going on, and then focus on the solution. Alright? Again, yogic principles for stress. The breathing exercise, pranayama, the 3-part breath. Again, when people are stressed, how many times do we hear doctors or many people saying, okay, hold your breath and count to 10. Why? Because when you control the breath, the mind automatically calms down. So this is a technique I've been using, which has helped me a lot in reducing the stress. And then stop, think, rest a bit, take a step back, evaluate the situation. Why are you stressed? What is stressing you out? Asking you all these questions. Again, who am I? Why am I here? The same questions again and again until they become second nature. Meditation, another one to reduce stress. So every morning I try, when I have time with the kids, obviously it's very difficult, but I try and sit down and meditate a bit to calm the mind and to reduce the stress. And just again, in meditation, just thank God for everything I have, try to knit and try to sew everything together. Faith, PMA, acceptance. So all these are intertwined, interrelated and interdependent. Okay? Exercise. Okay, part of MS is also muscle degeneration happens as well. Okay? So in order to counteract that, what they do recommend is to do bodybuilding or weight training to counteract muscle degeneration. So I go 2 to 3 times a week as a must, as therapy, to try and counteract that. That explains why I got such a good body. Not because I want this, because I have to. But you always have side effects, and that's a good side effect. You look good. Okay? Again, another one. Again, yoga involved again, the sun salutation. I just go forward a second. Sun salutation, Surya Namaskar. Why? This actually energizes the whole neuroglandular and neuromuscular system. Okay? What happens? You have a balance of oxygenated supply over the whole body. That's what Surya Namaskara does for you. I haven't been sort of a fan or really been pulled over towards the Hatha Yoga, but this is something I do because it encompasses everything and because of the benefits of it, especially with the neuromuscular and the neuroglandular system. So I try and do that about 4 to 6 on each side. And it has helped me a lot. To tell you frankly, it has helped me a lot with regards to many of the symptoms. Okay? And I would recommend it anyway to anybody with any ailment, or even if you don't have an ailment, if you don't do half on the exercise, to try at least and do this, because it has an all-rounder and a very good effect on the whole body because of the oxygen. Okay? Let's go back here now. So rest, again, rest is important. Rest again takes many forms, and I can use it with meditation or just lying down in bed and just thinking, introspection, meditating, asking questions, again applying all the yogic principles. Okay? It's very important because you actually recharge. Part of Dr. Swank also, he is not just about diet, he recommends rest, exercise, and a lot of the yogic principles as well. So funny enough, again, all intertwined. Ayurveda. What is Ayurveda? Basically, Ayurveda is, if you think like a shoe polish, you have 3 stages. First you clean the shoe, then you apply the main polish, and then you give it the shine, yeah? So Ayurveda, each stage happens a week apart. So minimum you have to be there is 3 weeks. The first week is getting the body ready for the treatment. The second week is the main treatment. And the third week is the shining, recharging, re-energizing the body. Okay? So, how did Ayurveda come about in my life? Alright, Ayur means life and Veda means knowledge. So this is basically the knowledge of life. What happened was that when I was diagnosed, my mother, she obviously came from India. She was living in India. And her mother was paraplegic. They heard of a doctor, a German doctor who came, who was an expert in spinal operations, a spinal surgeon. And they went to see him, and he saw him and said, there's nothing I can do. Then she heard about Ayurveda, which is a 5,000-year-old science, okay, proven by time. So what happened? Her father, my mom's father, my grandfather, he took her to see an Ayurvedic doctor. He looked at her and he says, I can make her walk in a month, and if I can't, I'll give you all your money back. And they thought he was high or something. Because they had taken her there for asthma, because she was very bad with asthma as well. So they took her for asthma, to try and help her with asthma, and he started saying, I'll make her walk and this. And they said, this guy's just after my money. He just wants to get her treated for money. So what happened? They just went back and didn't actually go again. But after a year, she was getting worse and worse, so they thought of him, and they went back. And sure enough, after 5 weeks, no, was it 5 weeks or 2 to 3 months? Anyway, she actually could stand up, and little by little she could walk holding the wall, and she finally could walk. But he said, his name was Lambrison, and he said, this is the first treatment. She needs to come every year at least once for 3 years to make full use and reap full benefits. Now, after the first year, they didn't have much money, so they couldn't go back. And a couple of years passed, and she started to go back again. So what happened was, they went back to him, and he looked, and he says, I'm sorry, the time frame you had has elapsed. There's nothing I can do now. Well, I can make her life a bit easier to live, but we can't go back. That time frame has elapsed, and there's nothing we can do on that side. So they did what they could, but unfortunately it was too late. So she said, why don't we try it? You've got nothing to lose, it's all natural, no chemicals involved. There's nothing to lose, come, we tried, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but at least you don't have any regrets. A bit apprehensive at the first, and especially getting people in the West, as usual, where you're going to go, why you're going to waste your time. I mean, if it works, then everyone will be doing it. I mean, because they don't believe in it. But I had this pull and saying, and if I don't go, and I live to regret it? So I took the decision to go against a lot of opposition. Why should you go? And I just had this pull, I had to go. So I said, look, nothing to lose. So booked the flight. It was in September, just after National Day, the same year I was diagnosed, 2013. So I took the plane and went with my mom. The first 3 weeks, my symptoms started to vanish. The numbness, the tingling, loss of balance, it started to vanish. And basically what they do is they recommend 3 consecutive years, all right? And the way it works is they don't look at the disease. They look at you as an individual. So if 3 people have cancer, 3 people have MS or whatever it is, then they focus on you as an individual, on your body specifically, body composition. So they look at the air, fire, water, ether, and earth elements of your body and see which is misaligned. And they try to balance them all out again. Alright? So that's how they work. They don't say you have cancer, okay, this is the treatment. They just try to realign that. And the way they do it is with internal and external medication. So it's a sort of a 2-pronged attack. So you have sort of medicated oils applied once a day, and each technique is different. And you also have oral medication, all natural, so no side effects, no chemicals. Alright? And I'm happy to say that in the past 7 to 8 years, even with MS, I haven't even taken one day off sick from work. Basically, what happens with the elements that you have here, they all have to be in balance, okay? You have the space or air element, ether air, which is the movement, which is the most important function of the body. Then you have the fire and water element, which is the transformation. For example, if you look at the mind side, is where body metabolism, digestion, the eyes, the blood, where transformation takes place. Okay? Like obviously in digestion, there's transformation taking place inside the body. And if you look at the water earth element, that's where cohesion happens, where everything is brought together. Alright? Love, nurturing, compassion, patience on the mind. On the physical side, it builds and strengthens, nourishes. So this is where everything comes together. So that's the way they work. Ayurveda, they work with tongue diagnosis, the pulse. Alright? So what happens? The telltale tongue. The tongue has or reflects the organs in your body. So each part of the tongue, for example, the front part has the left lung, the right lung. The center part is the stomach and the pancreas. Okay? And on the sort of back, the left side is the left kidney, the right kidney. So each body organ is reflected in the tongue. And if you look at my tongue, and this is a coated tongue representing sluggish digestion, that was when I went the first time. That was my tongue. I took a photo of it. And this part here is sluggish digestion, that's the part here, which is the stomach. Yeah? This is my tongue after 5 weeks. It actually signifies obviously improved digestion. It's nearly pink. And that's sort of what they use, that diagnosis. And for me, it's living proof. And apart from actually experiencing it, I'm feeling much better. I've actually done a lot of experimentation with my tongue. Again, it's slightly coated because I haven't been there in a year, which I'm going again in January for my 3rd time. And it's a very interesting science and how they work at it. And it makes a lot of sense. This you can actually research on Google, tongue diagnosis. Check your tongue, and then maybe you can tell the doctor, look, I don't think there's something wrong with my liver. Can you check it? You might be surprised. Okay? So, what I'm going to do now is I've got a video of Ayurveda, which I'll show you certain clips. Alright? And then I'll finish my talk. And basically this is about a woman. It's in French at the beginning, and then it's in English. To summarize, this is a French documentary which came out in France. I heard about this while I was there itself. I met French people and I said, how did you hear about Ayurveda and how have you come so far? And they said there was a documentary which was shown in France the same year in June, which spoke about this. And this is a French woman who had breast cancer. And she had Ayurveda and she got healed. So she came back and she saw her oncologist. At the beginning, what happened was when she had seen the oncologist, she was very rude, very abrupt. Obviously you get bitter when you've been diagnosed with something. So they did chemo and everything they had to do. And he had told her, come back, you will be clear. She came back and said, sorry, you're not clear. So she took a flight with her friends to India, just for a holiday. And there, as luck has it, she sat beside someone who I think had leukemia. And they started chatting, and that woman told her, I know where you have to go. So her French oncologist never heard from her again in months. And suddenly he got a call with a very pleasant woman, very happy woman. And he says, who is this? And he says, Marivela, or whatever her name was. And he didn't recognize her because her whole character had transformed. And when she went to him, he did a test and she was clear. And he asked her, what did you do? What have you done? You haven't come to see me in months. And she said, she explained to him what she had done. And then he says, okay, don't carry on explaining. You take me where you went. I want to hear and see for myself. So for 2 years they gathered the film crew and he went, the oncologist went with her. And this documentary came out, My Indian Doctor. So that's the summary of this documentary. The French person told me that, so I went back to my room there because I didn't know what they were doing. And I downloaded it. And I watched it, and then I understood what they were doing, what the Ayurveda was all about. Because my mom told me her experience. I went, in a way blindly because I didn't know what was happening, but the science then made sense once I watched this documentary. So I'll just play a couple of clips, and before I just say that, just say my decision. The decision I took was focus on the solution, not the problem. Whatever happens in life, happens. Why? No one knows. It's a comic, whatever it is. The tools, the yogic tools I used was, again, faith, de-stressing, relaxing, meditation, pranayama, everything. Thanks to yoga, I've been able to actually keep the positive mental attitude and move forward. I saw my my doctor a couple of weeks ago, and he said, it's incredible how positive you are with a critical illness. I said, well, what choice do I have? You can only move forward, you can't go back. The past is the past. And instead of crying and worrying, you just need to move forward. And thanks to the yoga, I've had that strength, internal, as Nani says, funnily enough, that we're all going to die, as we all know. So, why worry? We're all going to end up in the same chess box eventually. So, just live as best you can, and tomorrow will take care of itself. Like the Our Father says, give us this day our daily bread. It doesn't say the bread of yesterday, the bread of tomorrow, our daily. Daily is today. So, again, live in the golden present. Tomorrow will take care of itself. So I just put the timeline there so I remember what it is. So 1650 is the first one.
What are your goals in the body? She tried to modify her statement. I tried to do that. What are your goals in the body?
That's the oncologist.
Okay.
And that's her. That's the one who had breast cancer, okay? She's in French. That's actually Coimbatore.
Okay. Up on the hill?
That's, yeah. Well, that's in Coimbatore somewhere, because she went originally somewhere to Kerala, which is South India as well.
Yeah.
And then she went also to Coimbatore, to the place I actually go to as well. Many who have been to India would be familiar with that.
What I would like to know is when I came to see you, what did you do practically? Actually, we found Marinella as a person who needs help. She had cancer. So, as I told you earlier, cancer has roots in the soul, in the mind, and also in the body. So, I tried to convince her that she must change her outlook on life.
He helped me to understand that I have a problem. And when I go to see you, I was sure that I have a disease. And when I speak with him, he says, forget the disease for a moment. What is the problem? And you cannot, because
For me,
for you it's impossible.
No, it's possible. But I consider that my main role was to treat your disease.
And so, and you have done that.
Care.
Yeah.
No, I didn't do that. I was trying to modify her statement. I tried to do that. And practically, what are your main techniques or methodology to this? We try to win the friendship of that person. Confidence. Confidence. And I can tell you that you succeeded because she is your main supporter. Because we don't have a methodology. We interact with the person and we change. And also, when I deal with a person, especially who is receptive like Marinella, I am not trying to prove my faith on some system on her.
What do you call a person, a receptive person?
Because that is very difficult to define, receptivity. Because when we say something, they are ready to admit it, or they understand it.
With me, she was ready to admit nothing. She was the most unreceptive person.
I would say you started in the wrong direction.
Yes, you are very right.
Many people think that I don't want to live or I am not fit to live. Or whatever bad things happen to me, I deserve it.
Yes, this is true.
This is true. So we try to tell them that they don't deserve anything unless they choose consciously. I know once the disease manifested, we should not restrict our treatment to the soul only. We have to address the problem in the mind and then later correct the problems in the body. So for that, we need an adaptive system and also an adaptive person.
An integrated system.
Exactly.
Integrated system, which is not the case in Western medicine.
Exactly.
Everything is divided.
So I know that Ayurveda deals with persons, not with the diseases. So we took her to an Ayurvedic doctor. But treating the cancer in the body alone is not enough.
No, this I understand. This I understand. But what you told me, which is for me very important, you are when you receive a cancer patient who is previously receiving allotherapy or chemotherapy, you are not telling him stop it.
No, I will not. I will never say.
You will never say that. You will never say that. You will say that, and then we'll see what happens.
And also, when somebody comes to me who is taking allopathic medicines, I will tell them to have some supplementary Ayurvedic medicines, because Ayurvedic medicines try to correct your body, to bring the balance of your physical energies. So that can actually go along with allopathic medicine to reduce the damage, to reduce the side effects. The spiritual cure we suggest, and also the mental cure we offer, and also the Ayurvedic medicines. All these are very slow in action. Yes. They don't manifest quick results. Exactly. So for a person to remain confident that long is difficult. So the allopathy comes to help because it gives measurable results very soon. There are two types of sciences, I would say. Objective science.
Wrong.
It makes sense what he said. Basically, they don't treat the disease, they treat the person and see which of the doshas, they call it, is misaligned. And then the body, with time, as it purges out all the toxins, it sort of sorts itself out. You could think, I suppose, like a broken arm. You put a cast on and wait for 1 or 2 months till the body sorts itself out. So that's the philosophy behind it. I just try to see which one was. So that a couple here. 35, 32.
It's a conservative institution, and I see that you are a man of tradition, of culture, but also a man of progress and opening. Thank you very much. Thank you for welcoming me here.
That's the place I actually go to.
How old is this institution?
This institution, Ayurvedic Pharmacy, the main company was started in 1943.
1943.
And then the hospital, that activity was mainly production of quality traditional Ayurvedic medicine. Hospital was started in 1950. It started in a small way. It was in an outside campus in a rented building, but shifted to this campus in 1977. So it's a 3.5 acres of land. We have 120 bed capacity.
That's the reception area.
Indulal, would you tell me what are the global principles of Ayurvedic medicine? And maybe the specific things that you are doing here during this treatment?
First, I will tell about the basic principles of Ayurveda. It's the concept about the body and its functioning is totally different from the way the conventional medical system has looked upon. See, we in fact consider body as both structure as well as function. And the importance is given mostly for the functional aspect of the body, which we call as three doshas, or three functional principles of the body. The first and the foremost, most important dosha or the functional principle in the body is vata. That's in the Sanskrit terminology. So it's a principle of movement, perhaps the only mobile thing in the body which makes other things also move. The second is pitta, it's the principle of transformation. So any changes happening to the body, whether it is starting from the basic digestion to all the metabolic transformation happening in the body, is brought under the heading pitta. Third is kapha, or the principle of cohesion, which binds together all the things and keeps everything in the shape, structure, cohesion. So these three principles, vata, pitta and kapha, are to be in a state of balance when we are...
It's the Greek letter?
No, it's a Sanskrit. Vata, pitta, kapha. So these are basically the functional principles which are to be in a state of balance when we are healthy. And when there is an imbalance, there is disease. So whether it is treatment or diet restrictions or lifestyle modification are all meant to bring these three things back to balance. So this is in fact based on a concept that we are nothing but a miniature form of this universe. So whatever you see in the universe, you see within the body. And whatever is there within the body, in fact, in a subtle form is there all over the universe.
Sorry, you have to go or you want to see a couple of clips more?
I'm waiting.
Yeah?
Yeah.
There's a very short 2-3 minutes each. I just realized I'll take a photo of the different intervals instead of going back and forth. Sorry about that. Okay, that should make things easier.
So is that the person who treats you when you go?
It actually can't think this is long it talks about the cancer,
Yeah.
about how they feel, but that's not actually the one. He's the one who actually is just explaining. The one who actually treats me as sort of the director, he actually comes out later, the one who sees everybody. They work, they start I think at nearly 7, 8 o'clock, and he came once to our apartment at midnight. They don't stop doing rounds. Midnight, I still awake waiting for him.
Yeah.
Basically, you don't go to hospital,
Yeah.
you have sort of an apartment, and everything, they come to you. So the washing, they come and do it. The food comes to your room. The doctor comes to your room to see you. You don't go at any time to any hospital. So you're like in your apartment and you're served hand and foot.
Yeah.
You have a TV, you have Wi-Fi, you have everything there. There's 3 centers. One in the center, where then you can go to the mall. They've got another one sort of in a remote area, where there you have animals going around, just cabins where most of the Westerners actually go because they just want peace and do yoga and stuff, and they're just in nature. And they've got another one which is like a hospital, which is also in nature. So it depends which is most suited to you. So I'll just click here, let's see if I can get this. Okay, here we are. Let me see this.
Because you come
It's a principle. In fact,
rituel, il y a une mais
There are certain parts of it when they show the cancer, he goes and checks for medical. They've actually taken the oncologist took the natural medication because they have their own fields and everything is natural. So he took to actually experiment and actually analyze it in the West. So a lot of other parts that they just take and see how they do treatment, seeing cancer patients. But I'm skipping all that just to get the gist of what Ayurveda actually is and how it works. That's the one which I go to.
We understand disease as, in fact, an entity which is caused by derangement of certain functional and structural aspects of the body. So the purpose of the treatment is to bring back the balance by either eliminating the toxic factors from the body or just by simply pacifying the deranged factors. Doshas are the functional principles of the body which governs all the activities in the body. So any physiological functions can be broadly classified under all these three headings. What in Sanskrit we call it as Vata, Pitta and Kapha. What we actually do is different types of massage. What is more popular and more effectively practiced is oil massage. In Sanskrit it is known as Abhyanga, which is nothing but application of medicated oil on the head, face and all over the body. So there we need to understand a little bit of the treatment principles of Ayurveda. It's always the opposites. When there is a disease is caused by dryness, or when there is an aggravation of dryness in the body, you give the opposite of dryness. It is a lubricating, oily thing. So when there is increase of cold properties in the body, you treat with hotter thing, so that there is a balance. So this is the basic Ayurvedic principle of treatment. So that's why a traditional Ayurvedic company manufactures around 150 varieties of oil.
Did you have that? I've had that.
I only had 2 people.
Ayurveda considers, very interesting thing is that as a body is compared to an inverted tree with its root on top and branches and trunk down. So any treatment is just like watering or irrigating the roots of a plant. So though it is only done to the head, its effect is supposed to reach the most distal part of the body. Another treatment is Shirovasti. Shiro again means head, Shiras, Vasti means something to retain whatever medicated fluid we are going to. Shirovasti is effective in diseases of various ear, nose, throat diseases, degenerative problems of the spine, neck, migraine and other neurological problems. This combination of say Abhyanga, Tara, Pirichu, Navarakili is also done in very recuperative phase of various illnesses, including certain type of cancer, we can say.
No, he is taking care of me. He's taking care of you. Very well.
This is the analysis of cancer patients and
Studies.
sorry?
Yes, many.
Yeah. Again, my mom and I actually went to see the directors who will bring it to gym, not as a profit or business to help people, because this is not really a business center of a charity, because Ayurveda, like yoga and stuff, is being used commercially. But they said it depends on the weather, depends on the oils they mix, and the weather has a lot to influence what oils, what medication. It's so natural, there's no chemicals, so it's difficult until they come. They started a link with the East, where they had 30 Eastern doctors go to India for a month to practice Tantra and Ayurveda, so they have a link in Eastern Europe, so maybe it actually spread. There is Ayurveda in Germany and everything, but it costs a lot. In India, obviously, you can get the flight and everything, and it's a fraction. Those are the fields they have, where they make all these sort of ingredients and all that. They have their own fields, and each obviously plantation is for different medication. Again, this is a 5,000-year-old science, so they know which herbs and which plantations they need to use for different ailments.
In Ayurveda, there is no one plant, one disease association. Sometimes there may be 50, 60 ingredients used in one preparation. So the preparation will be well balanced. Ayurveda is actually a health care system, more a health care system than a system of treating diseases. Of course, that is one part. But the basic principle is, if your body is healthy, there won't be any disease. So Ayurveda is advising to keep the body healthy according to certain norms, according to certain lifestyle, daily routine, etc. Even today, comparatively few people are studying plants as a whole. They are going to molecular level, micro level studies. They forget about the plant. Only the molecules are important to them. But we are natural objects. We are part of nature. We cannot go against the principles of nature. In spite of all the technological development, scientific achievements, we are still basically part of nature. Just like a grasshopper, we are also part of the nature.
And you know that we are also using chemicals, as you said, extracted from plants as very potent anti-cancer agents.
You are isolating only one part from that. But instead, if you are using the whole thing, that will be more natural and that will be more familiar to the body. Because treatment for cancer is always having side effects, so many side effects.
I'm an oncologist. My field is cancer. Because of a complicated story of a patient who has been treated both in my institute, in my cancer institute, and here, I would like to understand better the differences and further if we are speaking of the same thing or not, and it can be complementary. And I think your experience could be quite interesting if you accept, because you have both culture. You are living in London.
Yes, I am.
But you are from Indian origin.
Yes.
When were your breast cancer diagnosed?
In November 2008.
In London?
In London.
Where have you been treated? In which hospital?
At the Royal Marsden Hospital.
Royal Marsden, the famous one?
Yeah, the famous one for cancer, yes. Because of the reduction in mamoplasty, somehow my sutures got septic. Because I had
infections, red infections,
yes.
scar infections.
Yes. What the doctors at Royal Marsden, what they said was that the sepsis is because of the radiotherapy and a lot of fat necrosis as
the same
on the same side, fat necrosis.
So despite the fact that it was absolutely not a severe case of cancer, it wasted a month of your life as well because of the complications of treatment.
Yes, a whole year.
And how was your morale at that time?
I was pretty low because if you kept on antibiotics for a long period of time, and then the fact that this is a very painful period, it was more painful rather than having the operation. So, the pus and the dressing, all that was very painful. So that was the period when I just couldn't go through with it. And that's when I decided that I would like to retire. So I retired from my work. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's painful. Our discussion is.
No, it's just it brings back memories of the pain.
Yes,
yes.
sensible à cette dimension.
Qu'est-ce qui manque?
Et that is not an end.
Quand même la chambre pour l'année prochaine. Alors, j'en fais pas le métier, la maladie, etc. Il y a des différences. Mais j'ai été frappé par le fait que, voilà, parce que aux États-Unis, certaines medication disent pour mon cancer, je suis suivi là-bas, mais pour mon hormone, c'est pris en charge humainement, moralement, c'est beaucoup mieux ici. Chose qu'on entend, ça m'inspire.
So we have a common enemy, which is death. I have to contradict. It's an enemy. That is not an enemy. But cancer is an enemy.
Death is not the enemy. Cancer is the enemy.
Cancer is an enemy. This is clearly, for the moment, a person knows that he's stricken with cancer. He's always thinking about when he will die. So this should be changed. It brings the daily idea of your own death. Exactly. In your daily life, which is something unbearable for most of us. Philosophically, remembering your death is very good, because then you will do only good things to yourself and also to others. But here, you are creating a kind of panic in an emergency situation. It's true, I think it's true in the West as well, in which the family situation, the social situation, professional situation is destroyed, and it changes the way the other ones are looking at you, and it changes the way you are looking to the other one. And it changes your vision of life. Even if the treatment is successful, even if you live long, your vision of the rest of life is changed, is modified.
And it's like the yogi principle of changing your outlook
Change the
in life.
definition of care we give the patient. Even whatever is your opinion that, recently, people with psychiatric problems, they were referred to as patients, but nowadays psychologists are referring to them as clients. It's true, yes.
The last one now, okay? That is true actually, even here before we were patients, and now sometimes you go home and you're sort of a client. It's quite funny how things are turning out. And the last one is on the spirituality part, yeah? And that would more or less give you a good idea of Ayurveda, how it works or what it is.
Om Aim Klim Klim Chandai Chinoha. Om Aim Klim Klim Chandai Chinoha. Om Aim Klim Klim Chandai Chinoha. Om Aim Klim Klim Chandai Chinoha.
Everybody is spiritual, because spirit is in everybody. That is my faith, that is my knowledge. So, everybody is spiritual, but organized religion and organized systems of expressing spirituality, they may be lacking it. So, deep inside, everybody knows that they are something more than their body and mind. Because their mind is changing, their attitude is changing. But still, the person is saying, I, the sense of I, which is, that does not change. So there is something more in every individual. That is spirit or the soul. And whether they express it, or whether they feel it, or whether they are using their body and mind to enrich what is going on deep inside, that is different. So everybody is spiritual. I found Dr. Thomas an open person. The very fact that he came to India to explore something new, that itself is a good beginning.
Mais là, on est presque au bout de ce voyage.
funny how even Ayurveda, what they're saying is what we hear every day. Death is going to happen to everybody, we all know we're going to die. And basically we're more than the body or the mind, we are spirit. And everyone gets in touch with the spirit in their own way. And it's related to yoga, a lot of it. What's funny is that the first time I went there, look how things work. There are many Ayurvedic places in Kerala. And my mom just booked this one because she knew someone who sort of booked it for her physically in India. So I get there, let's try a bit apprehensive, get inside the apartment, and what book do I see on the table? There's books. And I look, I say, you have brought me here, haven't you? And then I questioned, and they said someone in the Ayurvedic center, these books are for free, he just gives it to the apartment to give people something to read, because in the first treatment of Abhigayam, when they prepare the body for the treatment, you can go out. During the main treatment, you can't step out because if you get a cold, they can't treat you, and it's intensive treatment. And during the last week, you can go up but not far, which I challenged and I realized they were right. Because your body's been depleted of energy, you've been detoxified, but then you're actually shining up like a shoe polish, the final stage. And they said, you can go out on the final week, but don't go too far because you're going to feel weak. I said, I feel fine because I've been indoors during the intensive treatment. So I went out, I walked 100 meters and I was out of breath because I didn't realize that what they had done, that they had actually detoxified, but now I was recharging. And they said, when you go back to Gibraltar, make sure you don't do any exercise for 2 weeks. So when you start eating, you actually replenish and regain your energy. So I challenged everything. Like Nalanese, I've also always been a rebel. I mean, the same with the full moon. In Satnarayana, in the Hindu calendar, they said you shouldn't eat meat on Satnarayana. And I was telling my mother why. She says, because it's been like that. I said, I want to know why. Scientifically, sort of made sense to me because obviously the moon affects the tides. We are 60-70% made out of water. Makes sense. So, putting 2 and 2 together, the moon affects us. It's proven it affects the tides. So if it affects us, then the idea of being vegetarian Satnarayana, the way I understand it, is so that you conserve energy. If you eat meat and chicken and everything else, your body takes 2.5 hours to digest the food. You deplete energy. What happens? When someone comes and shouts at you, you shout back because you don't have the energy or the tolerance or the patience, you're frustrated. Whilst normally we vegetarian, when it's full moon, you conserve the energy. So when the moon is affecting people, then if someone shouts, you would have the patience and refrain from shouting back and thereby extending and multiplying the negativity, so you stop it in its tracks. That's why in sort of madhouses, they call it lunatic, lunar moon. And that's where everything started for me to understand why Satnarayana, which is in the Hindu calendar full moon, they're vegetarian. So I did scientifically is to conserve energy to avoid spreading a lot of negativity. So you basically conserve energy. You deplete a lot when you eat meat. So, my experience of my life, as I basically summed up to you, just perfect timing, it actually is 7:30. So, yogic tools I've used in my life, given everything I've gone through: acceptance, focus on solution, MS, mind stuff, diet, key, again, here they say the same thing, vegetarianism, PMA, positive mental attitude, Pakshabhavan, if you want to relate it to that, faith, things may not always turn out okay, but you have to be okay no matter how things turn out, live for today, a daily bread, not tomorrow's, today's, golden present, reducing stress, difficult with family, kids, and sometimes yes, you lose your chip, which is normal, otherwise you wouldn't be human, but there are certain exercises, and like breathing exercises, pranayama again, meditation, exercise again, sun salutation, hatha, bodybuilding to counter the muscle degeneration, rest, which is important for everybody to recharge and conserve energy, and Ayurveda, as you've seen, to detox and focuses on the 5 elements of the body. These are the tools I've used, yogic tools, which have worked fine for me up to now. I keep, obviously you do fall from ground gained many times, I get stressed and shout, and then I try and control it. Again, going back to the symptoms, emotional changes happen. Don't want to use it as an excuse, but sometimes I do feel it is due to the lack of control of the nerves or anything it is. So Then I do feel sort of guilty, but then I try next time, and I tell my children, okay, next time I'm doing homework with you, and I lose my patience, I get frustrated, and I start shouting, you tell me, Dad, remember you told me you're not going to shout? So then I can move out, calm down, and come back. So actually my kids are one of my greatest teachers, to tell you honestly, because I've got 3 lovely children, excellent, spiritual in their own way, and they do read the Golden Present every night before going to sleep. They wake up, they say their prayers, as my mother-in-law will vouch for. They begin the day with God, a positive thought of the day every day, and they're lovely children, lovely hearts, spiritual, very generous, humble, and it's a joy to learn from them. I mean, I think the best people you can actually learn from are kids, because, like Christ always said, no? Only the children can enter the kingdom of God, something along those lines. Or blessed are the pure as well. So, and kids are pure, until obviously they reach a certain age, teenage years. So I think that would sum everything up. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.